Now, in a previous video, we talked about using some of Artlist's embedded tools in order to create artboards for your client projects to help you out with the creative process in terms of communication. Now, recently, Artlist has added a bunch of new tools to their AI suite, but before we get into any of that, there's something I want to acknowledge and something I want to say before you use any of these tools for your creative process. There's already a lot of points of contention and a lot of tension between filmmakers and creators and some of the AI tools that are available. One of the things I want to go into before even talking about this any further, and Artlist is the sponsor of this video, so if you're watching this, they probably agree as well. There needs to be some sort of an etiquette when using some of these tools in terms of actually enhancing your creative process instead of being the creative process. We're going to talk about the AI voiceover tools and how to use that in a way that's a lot more ethical than trying to steal somebody's job, and as well as some of the image and video tools, as they've added new things to help make the process easier. But at the same time, my stance and Artlist's stance is not to replace creators, but to give new tools to make their process a little bit easier. We'll get there. Now we're going to go with some of the voice tools first, but I also want to go into some of the etiquette things that you should be doing, especially if you're going to use this in your final projects, YouTube videos, or just something to help with your creative pre-production. For one, if you are going to be using the text to voice, which essentially is when you text in a prompt into Artlist VO, and you get to pick from the variety of voices that they have, and you could tune different things in terms of the speed, how the pacing is going to go, their mood when they're actually repeating it to you. And if you are going to use something like that and it's going to be part of a final product, one thing at the very least is to have some disclosure, like disclosing a sponsorship video, like today's video being sponsored by Artlist and giving you a demo of some of these tools. One of the things you want to do, especially on YouTube, is click that little tab that says that this video has been altered by AI. That way, there's a little bit more transparency when a viewer is watching this. And just because me and you are able to tell certain things, it doesn't necessarily mean everybody can. So we are going to go into the text to voice AI tool, which is something that we talked about last year. It's pretty easy and straightforward to use. You essentially type in the prompt that you want to do, but they've added a couple of new parameters. For one, if you go to the drop down here, you could add in different languages. So you can use things like Czech, Dutch, Finnish, French, German, Greek, Hindi, Italian. Coincidentally, there isn't any West African languages in here. So Artlist, if you're listening, I would love to get some sort of option to do that. Now, that doesn't actually change your prompt into that language. It means that the language that you type in has to correspond with this guy. So obviously I speak English, I'm gonna put in English. And then you could also change the different accents that you want to, or the way that you type in your English might be different depending on some of these countries. America is close to Canada. Speed and everything makes sense. You could still change these parameters like you could beforehand, but a new thing that you can do is you could add in an effect. Now, this is going to be different than actually adding in the voice itself. So for example, if I want to get a monster and I want to use that as my effect, and then I want to go down to, I use all arounder quite a bit. So I'm going to select that as my voiceover. Once I hit generate, we'll wait a little bit and we're going to see how it sounds.
That quick brown fox truly does not care about lazy dogs.
That quick brown fox truly does not care about lazy dogs.
Now, we are going to talk about voice to voice, which is a little bit different from using text to voice. Obviously, I'm typing in the text, that inputs it, I pick the voice, and Bob's your uncle. But you could actually use your own voice in order to use some of the pre-recorded voices that are already on Artlist, and as well as add similar effects like we did in the previous example. Now, before I say any of this, I'm going to say this again just so we're all on the same page here. Please, for the love of all that's holy, if you're going to use any of my influence to use any of these tools, do it correctly and just don't use somebody else's voice, especially if you haven't notified them beforehand. One of the things you might run into a problem with, especially if you're using voices from somebody else, is you might run into a couple of copyright issues somewhere down the line. And I don't want you to do that, nor do I want you to use these AI tools for nefarious purposes. And if you are going to use somebody else's voice, at bare minimum, get written permission and a release form. That way, if a project comes out and you've used their voice, run it by them first, also just as a courtesy, but also at least everybody's going to be on the same page. All right, so we're in Artlist voice to voice over here, and you can pick between any of the voices you want to use. So I'm going to go over here. You got to make sure you click this on. You also have to make sure that you're using MP3s, waves, or OGG files. I've never used OGG, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring over my little example voiceover clip over to here. You could pick your effects similar to the previous example, and you could pick how much intensity you want to put onto one of these guys. And you can pick if you want to use a different voiceover over here based on some of Artlist's offerings, similar like you can do in the previous example. Now, I could use things like Chipper, I could use things like Vision, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a couple of different voice options that you have, but also a couple of effects options as well, just to mix things up and have a little bit of fun. And you can see where you can use this as an insert clip in your own videos, but obviously disclose that you're using AI, but at the same time, still use your own voice. Now, a way that Artlist supports creators is actually giving them money to fund their projects, and that's going to be the 100 100K fund, which I'm also going to show you the voice to voice because we're going to go through a couple of them while I explain this.
Now, Artlist is giving you the ability to actually earn $100,000 simply by having an idea. I'm going to leave a link in the description down below.
And that way you can submit your idea to Artlist. You only have a couple of days in order to do that. And that way, whoever
gets the best idea is going to be able to get the cash for your project. This could be a commercial,
documentary, or even a short film as well. There's a couple of different options. You go check out the site.
But as a way for Artlist to not only give you tools to support creators, they're also just going to give you a payout if your idea is good enough for them to give you the money for it. Now, I am going to go into some image to image stuff, especially when I want to do things for pre-production. We talked about this in a previous video, but now you can input your own images into Artlist AI, and you can add in prompts to get you closer to where you need to go in terms of communicating the visual language you want in your pre-production. I still don't recommend calling this AI art and posting this as a finished project, although this is an actual screenshot from a project I worked on a couple of weeks ago for a gym, but I actually inputted that into here. All you have to do is drag and drop to here. I've already done it to save some time. You can input a JPEG or a PNG, and then just a simple prompt like, can you make the fire suit orange? This is really similar to what you can do on Photoshop in terms of being able to select an area and then change part of the area you selected in, and then obviously, well, you're going to get one of these guys. Now, added to that, you can actually animate this as well. And to save some time, what I've done is I went over to video, and I'm going to be able to pull this guy up. That's going to be the animation, but I'm also going to show you the prompt as well. So let me just go into here, where you could begin a slow zoom in on a firefighter seated in the center, highlighting his intense expression, and then it's going to give you one of these guys. Now, the reason why I wouldn't necessarily use this in a finished project, and this is still going to be part of your pre-production, is if you look closely enough to this clip, just look at the hands for a second. It doesn't necessarily look realistic or something that you might want to use as a finished project in a documentary or a commercial, but it's still incredibly effective if you want to show visual language of portraying something to a client. There has been times where I've lost out on gigs because I didn't necessarily present exactly what my ideas were, and using this just like you did in the previous video is a way of being able to do that, but you could actually animate some of the images from your other projects where sometimes clients actually call you for the things you've worked on in the past. You can use that and try to change it up a little bit, and that way you can help portray that again and add it to your artboard. Now, another thing onto here, now going back in here very quickly, is that you can upscale this into 4K. It's still going to look like this. It's still going to have a couple of things, but once this is done upscaling, I'll show you what that looks like. So if you want to put this on a 4K timeline to kind of show a previs to a client on a particular timeline, or you just want to keep it on Millinote, which I do a lot for mood boarding and pre-production, you can do that as well. Artlist wanted me to tell you about some of the updates that they have to the tools on their site. And as somebody who's been using them for quite a few years now, these are tools that I use almost every single shoot that I have in different capacities in order to make my creative process a little bit easier. But at the same time, acknowledging the fact that some people are going to use AI for nefarious purposes to take over somebody's job or just to negatively impact the creative industry as a whole. I wanted to work with Artlist in order to try to make this sort of etiquette video to at least show you some of the ways that you can use some of these tools without trying to promote a product, but at the same time not necessarily explain to you how you actually use it properly. The same way where you can use your camera to do nefarious things, or you could use it to create films and create art, the same way if you're going to use some of these tools, use it for a process to help empower you as a creative rather than try to cut out middlemen, because you make the same people on the way up as you do on the way down. And if you guys want to know how you can integrate some of their new LUTs and also some of the new sound design in music, leave a comment down below, because that's actually going to be the next video when we talk about how to do things in post. That being said, I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.